Well, hello everyone, those that are catching online after the fact. We have Abby from the Victorian Electoral Commission and Tom, who's part of the Youth Advisory Group at the VEC as well. They're here to tell us about youth participation at the Commission and the projects that they've been working on and their journey over the last couple of years as well. So I'm going to hand over to Abby and Tom to tell us about their adventures, and we'll pick it up with a Q&A at the end as well. Over to you, Abby and Tom.
Super. Tom, do you want to do a quick intro or anything, or do you want to just kick in and
I can do that when my slide comes up.
Coolio. All right. So look, to start, I just wanted to briefly let people know, and it was great in the last session just to have a bit of time to reflect on my work history. But I actually worked in the youth sector for a very long time before the current role that I'm in, which is just basically still about engagement and participation, but with supporting a lot more broader groups than just younger people. So at the VEC, we prioritise groups that are underrepresented in either enrolling or voting or just general engagement. Young people, the evidence shows, are definitely part of that group. And the other main groups we work with are people with disabilities, culturally and linguistically diverse communities, Aboriginal communities, people experiencing homelessness, and people in prison. And within that, our younger people kind of focus is younger people within all of those groups as priority one, but also just general mainstream young, well, whatever mainstream means these days, but mainstream young people as well. So the big statistics show young people are underrepresented. They tend to possibly vote for the first time when they turn 18. So we get a bit of a spike there. But then after that, we have quite a significant drop off. And we need to kind of understand what that is about a bit more. Definitely hear some theories about, oh, maybe exciting, rite of passage to vote when you first get the opportunity. Oh, I did it and maybe I didn't really have a great experience, or maybe I felt what happened didn't actually make any difference. Yeah, so lots to unpack. Anyway, on this slide, this is just a bit of a highlight of the focus that we take at the Electoral Commission to work better with young people. So Tom's going to talk about our Young People Advisory Group, which is a fairly, about a year, I think, been going now, so fairly new thing. Our Passport to Democracy program, that second box, it's our flagship program that really, I suppose, it's been going for over 10 years, and its focus is to support young people just to understand the whole sort of electoral process better. It's been a school-based program. We've been sort of trying to evaluate the impact of it, and we're looking to move it more to supporting teachers, because we're just not getting the reach that we would like with the resources we've got. But there's a website, feel free to Google it, it will come up, and it's got lots of great stuff on there. Briefly, that next one, the KGI, that's a program we've done for over 10 years with Richmond Football Club's Corangamidji Institute, and that's to engage young Aboriginal people and to support their understanding, or our understanding about what impacts why, how, and how we can do it better to engage them in elections. We sponsor the Youth Parliament. We have 5 teams. Again, we sponsor the teams that will provide the opportunity for young people from our priority communities. And we recently have developed a partnership with the Young Mayors program with the Foundation for Young Australians. So they had their first Young Mayors program in Horsham, and we provided all the ballot boxes and the voting screens and supported the whole voting process. Mention YACVic there, partly why I'm here today. We've got a bit of a sponsorship and partnership with them just to look at how, again, we get information on elections out to young people, and as part of that, today is part of that too. And I wanted to mention, it was great to hear the co-design sort of references earlier on. We worked with a company called Portable that do a lot of co-design, great opportunity, learned a lot, especially from the young people involved. And we ended up putting out a series of information for local council elections just on different social media grabs that young people had basically come up with the ideas and messages and supported that idea. And then finally, the DA program, which goes to the next slide, that's probably our biggest participation program. Well, not just for young people, but all of the communities we work with. So this is now being turned into a BAU or business as usual program because we've tested it quite considerably for probably 3-4 elections now. And we recruit people. It's a peer-to-peer model. So we recruit people from the communities that we're trying to reach. So with lived experience or a very strong connection or understanding of those groups. And so again, young people are part of that process, and they basically get paid. It's casual salary, but we are able to pay them to go out and work with other young people to talk about elections and enrolling and voting. So I think that's enough from me. I think it'd be more helpful to hear about Tom, and I'm keen to hear. I told him he's got to be completely open and transparent about his experiences on the YPAG, because very much that's what makes it useful for us. Actually, shall I just quickly say how it started, because we talked about that? Yeah, so we've got advisory groups for all of those groups that you just saw on the screen, but we didn't have one specifically for young people. And so it was identified that they are a group that we needed to learn more from. And so we basically went out and had a chat with a few different service providers and some young people about, okay, how would this work? And the main learnings that we got were that we had to make the experience, and this has been something we're shifting to the other advisory groups now from this learning, but it had to be more of a win-win. We had to ensure young people who gave their time and effort also got something more from it. So we embedded an opportunity to have guest speakers and some shared learning in the meeting. And also the feedback was people wanted to meet more often. So at the moment, our meetings only were, they were once with just the group, and then we do a combined meeting once a year as well. So they're only meeting twice, whereas the YPAG we're trying to meet with sort of between 6 and 8 times a year. And I think Tom's going to talk about some of the things that I didn't even appreciate are different about our advisory group compared to others. So I won't go into that, but feel free to I'll try and keep my chat open so I can have a look if there's any questions. But over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Abby. So yeah, my name's Tom. My preferred pronouns are he, him. I work at YACVic, so YACVic's based in Melbourne, but we do things across the state, as you know. I'm from Yorta land. I'm up in Shepparton, and I'm currently studying at university. But with the uni year ended, it's nice to be back home. So I joined the YPAG through connecting with the VEC while participating in the YMCA Youth Parliament program. I have a fair bit of prior experience with these youth advisory groups as a young person participating, but also through working with YACVic, where we often get the opportunity to help train or run workshops with youth advisory group members and also their staff. So a lot of local councils, youth groups, things like that. Broadly speaking, though, I think the Victorian Electoral Commission's Young People Advisory Group, while it's a bit of a mouthful to say, is actually run really well and is really authentic. So importantly, it has a mix of young people across many age groups, but it also mixes in with professionals from the youth sector. And I think that's one of the things that makes it really authentic. And I'll kind of explain my thinking as to why that's so important. And it's also something that isn't really done very much across other youth groups that I've seen, particularly in regional Victoria. But yeah, it helps solve one of the dilemmas that you might come across in your youth participation efforts. So there's 2 dilemmas I kind of see. One of them is that often there's an imbalance of power between young people that are trying to help advise an organization and the physical organization. And B, which I find especially magnified through government youth advisory groups, is that often these young people are really passionate about topics that goes across a variety of different departments within an organization, but youth-related topics are often held within a single portfolio, and this can create a bit of dysfunction within a group and really limit what's kind of capable with effective youth participation. And this is because frequently young people's expectations for change can be out of a youth group's immediate capacity. So something that's achievable right now in this instance. And this credences the theory that effective youth participation is pretty difficult to achieve. Where I think the VEC is a bit unique and should really be looked forward to as how to do youth participation in the sector is that these kind of challenges are pretty magnified within the VEC due to the nature of how it operates. So it's a group that especially can't be biased in politics. Yet this is juxtaposed with contemporary Australian research, which suggests young people are really highly passionate about political issues, particularly right now. So this creates a bit of challenges that are heightened with the VEC. And these barriers are something you'll find in any organizations, but especially things like local councils. From my perspective, though, this compartmentalization issue and expectations versus capacity problem are solved relatively well through mixing in youth sector experts as members in the youth advisory group. This kind of delineates it from being young people are kind of separate and need to be treated differently. And this kind of creates an atmosphere where people are equals and it feels as though the advice is taken on a little bit more confidently. And even if it's just a perception thing in other organizations, perceptions really do matter. But yeah, and another thing is that, where are we? I feel like as though we as members of youth participation groups within the VEC, we often get to speak with the executive and actual decision makers of the VEC. So these are people who may be outside of a youth portfolio, but are still pivotal in their particular portfolio. And that creates a really strong, effective strategy in trying to solve the matters of what's capable within the compartmentalization issue and the expectations of young people. Because instead of just saying we're going to solve these issues or we can't solve these issues, you're just giving young people access to the decision makers to directly talk to them. Instead of trying to act as a bit of a pathway for the young people, you're just giving young people the direct access. And that's something that I think is really done well. Just some last tips though on youth participation. Something that I find that I think is really beneficial for organizations dealing with young people and communicating with young people, working with them, is transparency. I, especially at least where I've grown up as a young person, I've felt as though young people haven't been given enough credit. Oftentimes as well, it's not particularly from the youth workers, but it can be from another worker or something like that, where the communication just isn't effectively communicated with young people about what a youth group is capable of, what is the capacity, where can it go, that kind of deal. And I think transparency and communication is something that really needs to be worked on, because if you can do that, then a lot of the problems that I at least see through my, daily job working with youth councils and all these other youth advisory groups, I find like a lot of those problems are some of the root causes just ineffective communication. But yeah, transparency I think is the main thing, and just being honest with young people. Other than that, I think learnings and goals moving forward. Abby, did you have any points to say on this?
Well, I think from my end, I just wanted to mention, I think one of our big learnings is that we actually record and report on for all our advisory groups what information, advice, feedback that we get, and we track it to make sure whether we actually implement it or not. And if we don't, we make sure we record why. And I think we're getting hopefully better with the actual members to make sure that we keep them in the loop, because sometimes they'll suggest or recommend something that can take, even years to implement, especially if it's a sort of recommendation for legislative change. But I'd have to say, I think the big learning for me is because we've had an evaluation person in for a while, and she's the one who's put that in place. And I've realized how important it is, because if you have a table where you write down all the recommendations, input and advice from your members, and then you have to actually say why or if you addressed it, it actually holds you to account. So I think that's a great learning. And I think when I chatted to Tom before when we were preparing this, that point that he made about the high level. So we make sure that our electoral commissioner, we book the meetings around ideally our members, but we always check in with our electoral commissioner first to see if they're available for meetings. And I, again, like Tom said, I've realized the value of those very senior people hearing directly from people that are impacted by what we're doing. It's just, you can never present it in the same way, even if you are as passionate as me about engagement of people. It's always a bit watered down, and it just never has the same impact. So I think I had forgotten until Tom mentioned that, you know, the value of that. And the only other things I was going to mention is we're at the moment, we're thinking, what we do often with our meetings is I'll put a call out across the organisation. Has anyone got anything that, you know, they would like input on or that they think would be valuable to share? And I've realised people across the organisation are a bit hesitant because they don't work in this space. So we're thinking we might get like an opportunity for staff just to, if we've got an okay balance of numbers, to sit in so they can see how the meeting operates. And we think for our staff, it might lower kind of their hesitation or possibly anxiety about whether they should participate or not, because we think that might be at play. And the only other thing I was going to say is we do, every 2 years, we do like a survey with members to find out, you know, and just get feedback. And we've had all sorts of things come up. I noticed you did that in the meeting today for the year, which is great, because again, really valuable. It's the only way you can improve it. So they were probably my takeaways for now. And I think that was the end, wasn't it, Tom? We wanted to open up if people had questions or...
Thank you so much to you both. Folks, you're very welcome to pop questions in the chat or to raise your hand using the raise hand function under reactions, or just turn your microphone on and shout. I guess that'll get our attention too. The thing that was in my mind was related to sort of what you just said, Abby, about that balance. Tom talked quite clearly about how impactful he sees it to have young people in a space with sector experts and to foster that discussion and build capacity of young people, but also integrate their experiences and ideas together. Do you have a kind of a number, like, of how many young people and how many workers, or is it less about numbers and more about certain types of organizations being represented or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we, even with all of our other advisory groups as well, it's very easy to fill it with organizational representatives. And so I think the thing is that we really try hard to prioritize the actual lived experience, or that deeper understanding from you know, yeah, from experiencing something. So on the YPAG, we've probably got more younger people than organizational reps, and that was very intentional, because sometimes when you're joining a group like this, if you've had just less opportunity or experience, it can feel intimidating and stuff. So we just felt for this one that was even more important. But I think we're learning with the other groups, it's actually no different. If you haven't had the opportunity to express yourself and in these forums, and sometimes they're quite formal, aren't they, Tom? Like, you know, we've got the agenda, and, you know, my team are all stressed in the background, electoral commissioners attending, you know, his time's important. So you got to be on it, and you're sort of keeping it flowing. But yeah, I think what we probably need to do is reflect on it for the other groups, because depending on the personality you get, some people are fine, they'll just have the confidence to speak out, but sometimes you don't get that. And Yeah. So look, we don't have a quota per se. We do, though, every year review who we've got on there and what our representation is like. And we do try and sort of address, you know, for our group that represents people with disabilities, for example, we try and make sure that we don't have, you know, one sector too represented over another sector, you know, intellectual disability versus a physical disability, or yeah. So that's probably all I'd say to it. Nothing strict, but it's always on our agenda to review and keep in mind.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, just a reminder, folks, we're going to wrap up in just a minute. So if you've got any questions you wanted to ask, yeah, pop them in the chat now or raise your hand and I'll throw over to you in a moment. Yeah, the other thing I was thinking was around, I would completely agree that having young people and organization in together creates a better participatory experience. The only real consideration, or one of the big considerations, is around making sure that that environment is empowering for young people. So that work has obviously been done in the background to make sure that that can happen, and that isn't necessarily going to feel possible in all organizations. I think many organizations see creating a group specifically for young people as a safe way to support youth voice in their organization, almost like a protected space for young people, as opposed to sort of throwing people into the lions, into the pit, you know, into the lion pit, where you're not necessarily in control of how other people are going to react, respond, and treat those young people. So I don't know if I've got a question particularly. I think it's just more of a reflection around, yeah, really interested in that being such a clear success feature here, and how do we put that into context for others who may feel like, yes, I'd love to do that, but I don't think the people in my organization are going to treat young people with the respect that they deserve. And I'm kind of thinking, yeah, are there the right times and the wrong times to be creating that kind of environment? So maybe I did have a question there. Do you think there's a right time and a wrong time, or is that difficult to answer maybe?
Yeah, it's a great question. Tom, what do you think?
Well, I think youth participation groups especially, I think the best way to think about it is like a good superhero movie. So at the start, the superhero or the youth advisory group, you can't expect them to be completely empowered, completely fully capable. They need a bit of support. You're going to find the villain who might be more of a metaphorical villain in this kind of situation, but it could present as a challenge. And the idea is you give enough support at the start, so when they come to this challenge, you still support them through it, but ideally they've already got the skills and the capacity to be able to solve it. So in saying that, I feel like these kind of situations is something where it shouldn't be treated as static. Potentially at the start, you might have more, you know, if it's an area where these young people are really passionate, but they're maybe not taken as seriously as you'd like within the organization, potentially then you look at expanding it to a person from the youth sector who might be able to provide a bit more authenticity. Even though you wish you wouldn't have to do it, could be a viable strategy. But in saying that, not every superhero movie is the exact same. So it's kind of it's a situation per situation deal. So you want to figure out what works well for you. And the only way you can do that is by communicating with the young people.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. Great response. And yeah, I'd completely agree. Moving away from that binary of sort of good and bad participation and thinking about it in terms of the context of your organization, what's possible, what's practical, what does success look like, are all key kind of features. All right then, folks, I think we're going to wrap it up there, unless anybody else does have a question before we do so. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording there.